Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm rising to speak to motion 53. And today we are discussing coastal erosion, which is a major issue for a large part of New Brunswick. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that one of the main concerns in my region is water. It's flooding, it's coastal erosion. I know everyone in this House has heard me speak many, many times about the Chignecto Isthmus and the threat of the dikes being overtopped by the water in the Bay of Fundy and flooding my community. And if you go to the other side of my riding along the Northumberland Strait, we face issues around coastal erosion and flooding and storm surges. And this is true of the 2,250 kilometers of coastline that we have in this province. And while I hear government saying we're already doing what's in this motion, I would say not enough is being done at this point, Madam Speaker. And so we need to be more ambitious. And we need to understand the science of what we're talking about as well. When we talk about coastal erosion, we have to remember that it is a naturally occurring cycle that creates the coastlines that we have. And so we need to work with nature in order to have long-term solutions that make sense. There are many people who are at risk right now. Their homes are close to falling into the ocean, Madam Speaker, and we need to understand that we can't forever keep back the tides in every place, and we're going to have to decide between three options, really, in all of these cases, Madam Speaker. And when we look at what Dr. Jeff Allerhead, a professor of environment and geography at Mount Allison University, a geomorphologist, Madam Speaker, what he says we have options to do when it comes to coastal erosion is, one, to protect whatever we're trying to protect. Let's say it's a home or a property. We can do that. And, you know, he says we can protect almost anything if you're willing to spend enough money. And so we have to consider what that looks like. Another option is to move up and or back. And so this is something that will make sense in a lot of cases. And then the other option, which is the least palatable, is to retreat. And so these are really the options that we have, Madam Speaker, and we need to, unfortunately, we're still waiting on a climate risk assessment from this government, Madam Speaker. We need to actually have the risk assessment, have that data, and to have proper planning in place, because a lot of the problems we're facing are a result of governments letting poor planning happen for decades and decades, allowing things to be built where they shouldn't have been built. And so now they're there, and so we need to figure out how we're going to protect communities, but we need to prevent new infrastructure from being built in places that it shouldn't. And so we need stronger planning, we need better setbacks, and buffers, Madam Speaker. I heard a member of government talk about how 59% of municipalities now have full or partial adaptation plans when it comes to climate. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that municipalities are on the forefront of dealing with these issues, of dealing with the impacts of climate change, including erosion, but they are not being armed with the tools, with the support, and with the finances that they require to deal with this huge undertaking. They need to have more provincial leadership, Madam Speaker, and support in order to deal with these things. They need provincial and federal funding in order to protect their communities, and everywhere in the province should have climate adaptation plans, Madam Speaker, not 59%. And in that case, as I think it was the Minister of Public Safety said, some of them are just partial plans. How, in the year of 2024, can that be the case? The needle is not moving on that, Madam Speaker, fast enough, and I'm extremely concerned. We have seen storm after storm. Things are getting worse. We're seeing more and more storms that, it's losing relevance now to say 1 in 100-year storm because they are coming more frequently, Madame Speaker. Je parle de les côtes tout au long des côtes dans le nord de la province sont à risque. Je pense à Caraquet, par exemple. I'm thinking of Grand Manan, St. Andrews, Laurenville, Cape Tormentine. People are at risk. Their homes are at risk. And for too long, this has been ignored. I can remember back when I was on town council in Sackville, and we were waiting for provincial statements of interest to talk about planning, to talk about the coasts. Municipalities do need that support. Many municipalities are small and aren't going to have staff who can address this type of thing. They need more support. And so I think of especially smaller municipalities along the coast that need better support and better, I guess, not just support financially, but assistance in ensuring there's proper planning. I'm interested to hear members saying that that they're taking mitigation of climate change seriously, because I certainly don't think that the current climate change plan that this government updated is ambitious enough, that it's good enough. I certainly do not think that. And there are many things that need to be done. First of all, we shouldn't frack. Just going to throw that out there. I thought we settled that about a decade ago. No, we're still talking about it. So that's clear. The International Energy Agency has been saying for at least a decade, because I've been quoting them for like a decade, that we can't build new fossil fuel infrastructure. We can't do it. It locks us into using it for longer than we can afford to do so, and we really can't afford to do so anymore. We need to be coming up with plans that make sense in terms of investing in public transportation, like buses, not just ride shares. That's important. I applaud the work of like urban rural rides, for example, but we need leadership from government and to have things like buses and trains to get people around. We need to ensure that we are supporting communities in making changes. And I keep hearing government sort of shrugging their shoulders and pointing at China. The emissions, like often we're looking at territorial emissions, and China's emissions are encapsulating a lot of our consumption, actually, because they are manufacturing a lot of things that we're consuming. And so it's quite misleading to just point the finger at China all the time. Okay, and I'm hearing some comments on that, but either way, we need to be looking at having sustainable manufacturing and production closer to home, reducing transportation emissions, reducing different types of labor that are exploitative in different places, such as China, and ensuring that we are more self-sufficient, self-reliant, because we are not resilient enough, Madam Speaker. We saw it during the pandemic when the supply chains were disrupted and people started hoarding their toilet paper and being worried about if there'd be enough food. We're not that far away from that happening again. That can easily happen, and climate disasters are a likely cause in the future for that, Madam Speaker. Speaking about coastal erosion, I'm concerned that there's an automatic tendency to think of riprap, to think of installing rock armoring along the coast. That can't be the solution everywhere, Madam Speaker. There are going to be cases where this makes sense, but we need to be looking at natural solutions. Restoring saltwater marshes, for example, ensuring that there's vegetation in certain places and protecting those types of ecosystems and wetlands that buffer waves, that can help prevent erosion. I think of EOS Eco Energy in my community, who has helped to plant trees and helped to increase vegetation along some coastal areas in order to take advantage of those natural solutions, because there are consequences to the rock armoring. And actually, going back to quoting Dr. Jeff Allerhead, Professor of Environment and Geography at Mount Allison, rock armoring of the shore is already causing the loss of some beaches, Madam Speaker. It disrupts the cycle of where the sand is, and what happens too is it means that there's still erosion happening under the surface, and deeper water means bigger waves crashing against boulders, and that means more loss of sand, dunes, and wetlands. And so that can't be the answer. The other thing is there's energy in those waves, and if there's rock armoring in one place and not beside it, then those properties, those people may be losing more of their property. And so this is why it cannot be at an individual level that we come up with these solutions. They need to be at a community level and at a provincial level to ensure protection and fairness, Madam Speaker. And so I really want to emphasize the need for prevention and for acting before it's too late. It is so costly to rebuild. Not only is there the risk of loss of life or injury, damage or loss of property, Madam Speaker, when we wait too long, but it's awfully expensive. And we need to be taking a preventative approach. Because there's a UN report that identified some of the most vulnerable places in North America. The Chignecto Isthmus, where I live, is the second. The first was New Orleans, Madam Speaker, and we know what happened with Hurricane Katrina. We need to be taking this seriously and ensuring that we're moving faster and that we're more ambitious, Madam Speaker. And so, especially in light of the government saying that they're already doing what's in the motion, I think that we should be more ambitious with this motion. And therefore, I am tabling an amendment that is certainly in the spirit of the motion, but intends to make it more ambitious and stronger, Madam Speaker. And so, I move, seconded by the member for Fredericton-South, that motion 53 be amended as follows. In the resolution clause, by striking out all of the words following New Brunswick and substituting to create a climate change risk reduction fund to make the infrastructure investments required to safeguard vulnerable communities from flooding, coastal erosion, and violent weather. By adding, after the resolution clause, be it further resolved that the Legislative Assembly urge the Government of New Brunswick to establish a coastal protection authority to coordinate actions necessary to protect communities and infrastructure along New Brunswick's 2,250 kilometres of coastline. Thank you, Madam Speaker.